My name is Sarah Jesmer. I'm a queer Canadian American. I was raised in a small farm town within a strict religious system. I didn't see many queer or trans people growing up around me, and I didn't even see queerness in myself until I was much older. I'm honored to be your host for this conversation as part of Grey and Grey Montreal's podcast and film series Queer Elders Sharing. It's funded by le Bureau de lutte contre la homophobie et la transphobie. This series aims to make one small bridge between queer and trans experiences with joy, with pain, with growth, homophobia, and transphobia of the past, present, and the future. This film today is just one starting step. Safe and caring intergenerational links can make our community better in so many ways. I want to take a moment to acknowledge absence in today's conversation. This roundtable is in no way a representation of the entire queer and trans community, and it shouldn't be taken as such. All we can do is speak from our own experiences and keep working to make sure that more spaces like this for sharing keep happening. I want to acknowledge the absence of those who have been subject to attempts of systemic erasure, but are still holding their rightful place to this day, like those whose territory that we are on right now. We're speaking on aujourd'hui or Montreal, which is situated within the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and the Kanien'kehá:ka, who were co-founders of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. They're home communities for some Two-Spirit LGBTQIA+ people too. And the absence of those whose voices have been silenced by targeted violence, like 5 people who were shot and killed at Club Q in Colorado Springs because of homophobia and transphobia, whose stories have not made it onto national news. Some queer and trans community members can't see themselves as seniors growing up in this world because it was and is dangerous, then and now. But it's not hopeless, which is what we want to talk about in this film. You can find links to more groups that foster this type of hope too, including those that center the experiences of Black and Indigenous queer and trans people, and queer and trans people of color in the film description. Before we get started today, I'm going to pass the floor to our younger guests. If you can introduce yourselves with your name, your pronouns, and anything you want people to know about you. So if you want to start with you.
Okay, hi, my name is Eve. My pronouns are she, her. I identify as a cis lesbian. If you're wondering what my weird accent is during this, I'm Scottish, so yeah.
My name is Nikki Taylor. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a poet, journalist. I grew up in a very Catholic household in the suburbs of Toronto. And a little fun fact would be that if given the opportunity, I would die for Jennifer Coolidge.
Hello everyone, my name is Clément. I'm a 21 years old journalist, journalism student at Concordia University. I've been part of the podcast project that Gay and Grey also did, but now I'm very happy to be one of the guests for this film project. And thank you.
What are your pronouns, Clément?
Il et lui, like he and him.
Thank you. Would you like to introduce yourselves now?
My name is Carol Baker. Pronouns are she and her. I'm retired Montréalaise par adoption, psychotherapist and a counselor, originally from Toronto.
Hello, I'm Daniel Wiley. I'm a born English Montrealer, and I'm very happy to be here.
What pronouns do you use, Danny?
He, him.
So I understood that you guys prepared some bios for today's discussion. Do you want to share those with us?
Sure.
Thank you.
As a 76-year-old mother of 3 daughters and grandmother to 6 biological grandchildren and several honorary grandchildren, I was 50 years old and married almost 30 years when I came out of the closet. This represented a huge leap. And even to this day, I wonder how I found the courage to finally acknowledge and act on this long suppressed aspect of my identity. I had no idea at the time, but what needed to happen before I was able to muster up the courage was to work through my deeply internalized lesbophobia. When I look back over the last 26 years, I see that I've come a long way in terms of my lesbian identity and the community I have developed. Along with proudly identifying as lesbian, I also now embrace the label queer, Over many years, I have been seeking ways to be part of this broader community through extensive volunteering, my work as a counselor and psychotherapist on the 2 SLGBTQ health team at Sherburne Health Centre in Toronto, my relationships, and through a social life that is as inclusive as possible. For me, being lesbian is about more than sexual orientation and ideology. It is also very much about activism and community, including being an ally. I feel privileged to be part of both the lesbian and queer communities here in Montreal, and I take special pride and pleasure in being a member of the collective of La Maison des Rebelles, a social housing project for older lesbians and their allies.
Thank you.
I'm a 66-year-old gay white man. I was born in Montreal, but have lived in Toronto, Edmonton, Sherbrooke, and Calgary, and I've seen my share of queer history. One example was the trucks raid of 1977, one of Montreal's Stonewall moments. I was among the more than 2,000 people who came out the next night to protest the police brutality. It was a pivotal point in my life and convinced me to not hide my sexuality and work towards equality. I consider myself a caretaker, and some within my circle of friends have often called me Mother Wiley. I have been in 2 long-term relationships. My first partner, Richard, died of AIDS in 1992. We were together for 11 years. My relationship with Michael lasted almost 25 years. He died in 2021 at the age of 49 from a heart attack. Grief has visited me on more than one occasion. I continue to be a caretaker.
Thank you for sharing your bios and your histories. I was wondering if we could move to any kind of questions that younger folks might have about your bios or your histories. Do you have any questions for them?
Oh, I think I have a question.
Right.
Your bios are very impressive, like it forces respect. So from your perspective, how do you see young people today? Like, are they as involved as you would like them to be, or?
Well, for me, they're the hope for the future. I am just so impressed with the openness, the inclusiveness of youth I meet. And this isn't necessarily the case in older members of the community. I mean, it's a generational thing. Yeah, for me, it's one of profound respect and hopefulness.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to see things that are going on in the community today with younger people that we only dreamed of when we first came out or when we were considering coming out. I'm a cis white male, and I was able to hide my sexuality at work. But, you know, when I lost my first partner, it was terribly isolating for myself because I couldn't tell my coworkers. So today I see young people being themselves, and it brings me hope for the future that more and more people, your generation seems to be a lot more open towards queer people than ours was. And, you know, for example, we're concerned about going into care now, and we're not sure how the caretakers will react to us being homosexual or transsexual. So there's still work to be done.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, question for you, Carol. Leading up to you, finally coming out, were there moments where that kind of, like, the need for that kind of crystallized? Was there, like, an event that sort of, triggered it? Or was it kind of just this, like, compounding over years and years?
Well, I'm sure it was a compounding, but that compounding was on not at a conscious level. The absolute knowing came in the form on my 50th birthday of a graphic dream where I was making love with the woman who was to become my first lover.
Wow.
There
Prophetic.
There you go.
Yep.
That's really
all have
beautiful.
dreams like that. Eh?
Yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible because I had no difficulty with the dream and knew instantly that what I needed to do was come out of the closet.
I remember, like, before I knew I was gay, saying that I would only come out to my parents if I had, like, a person or a label. And, like, for me, it ended up being a person that I was dating. And I don't know, I just, in hindsight, I wish I, like, knew what label I was using at that time. But, like, it felt so good to finally have, like, someone who, like, helped my brain make sense of everything. Like, I feel like I also felt that like, at the time I was like, am I bisexual? Am I faking it? Like, am I actually just straight and I'm faking this? And then, like, just knowing for certain with one person, like, meant a lot, especially when, like, I just hadn't ever had that connection with a man, and I felt like something was wrong with me, or I was, like, never going to feel that. Like, it was broken, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's funny that you go through that questioning phase. Am I gay? Am I not gay? You know, my first experience was with a man, and I had a lot of fun. But I also, in the back of my head, because of my Catholic guilt, I decided that I was going to have a relationship with a woman, and it just was the most. For me, it was very unsatisfactory, and it's got nothing to do with the other person. It was me. That wasn't part of who I was. So I've been gay ever since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny, like, the lengths that you go to kind of, like, be anything but queer. I don't, like, when you're in that period of, like, questioning and wrestling with those demons, to use a Catholic word. But yeah, I just remember for so long I really wanted to be bisexual because I wanted to be able to, like, have a wife and kids and, like, give my parents what I knew they wanted. Yeah, and I this is kind of silly, maybe I shouldn't say it, but I'm going to anyways. If it weren't for Margot Robbie in The Wolf of Wall Street, I would have come out as queer so much sooner.
Margot Robbie, are you listening to this?
Don't call me, but
Your time is done.
Come on, how do you feel about this?
I feel kind of an outsider because for instance, I didn't struggle with any, religious burdens when I came out because I was born atheist. And like my coming out process was very long. Like coming out to myself took some long time. Then coming out to my parents took some long time. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I ever really suffered from the fact of being gay. And I was taking it very easy and slow. And of course, I had apprehensions about making it public, but it ended up going well. So I'm very glad that, everyone is doing his own and their own path. But we can, at the end of the day, we can all in a few years, we will be able to contemplate what we did, and everyone will be very, glad and happy with their coming out and the way they, manage this information and who they are.
Yeah, it's really individualized to each person. Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't imagine wearing any other label besides lesbian and queer. I have to say that there's something wonderful about the concept of sexual fluidity, which I think is much. Thank you to all of you for that kind of openness. And in the words of a close friend, why would I ever want to limit myself? So who knows? I mean, I was a straight woman for 30 years. If the right man came along, I would hate to think that I would absolutely reject that possibility. So let's hear it for sexual fluidity, because I think That's really what it's all about.
Yeah. And the whole idea of fluidity, whether it's gender or sexual orientation, I think we're becoming better to understand. And that's why one of my questions I guess I had for you people was, do you think that we need to label ourselves now? I come from old school, so I'm a gay man. But do we need to label ourselves because of fluidity?
I think it's funny that you say this because I agree with the opinion that we all have of like how great sexual fluidity is, but I feel very rigid in the labels I use. The label lesbian is really important to me. I'm comfortable being referred to as queer, but I would never introduce myself as anything other than lesbian, maybe gay in certain like straight circles. But for me, like that word just held so much like grossness for a long time. I feel like growing up, like long before I even considered that I was lesbian, it always seemed like something dirty, and like lesbians I was imagining like very gray and drab and depressive and not fun. And I was imagining like gay men as like everything that queerness is about. And like now that I care a lot about that label, and now that I like found that label, I feel like it took me such a long time to find it that I'm very like protective of it.
There's never been this level of like visibility of queer people, trans people, and with that also comes a layer of like scrutiny. Yeah, like we definitely see that, in the States and in Canada in terms of the experiences that trans people have moving through the world. Yeah, I think one thing is just that it's kind of hard because of that visibility. It can be hard to like homophobia and transphobia almost are harder to talk about because, we can be like, RuPaul's Drag Race is like one of the biggest shows in the world. Like, but that in terms of the actual effect that those kinds of things have on like the material conditions that we live our lives in, I don't think you can always make that connection. I
also sometimes wonder if we're leaving older people behind too, like not just older queer people, but like, for example, like I've always had a lot of tension with my mom about like gender issues. Like I feel very secure in my gender, but my mom has read a lot of fear-mongering things that make her, and she's confused. And like we had a very serious argument about it recently where we didn't talk for a few weeks. And since then, she's been watching a lot of documentaries about trans people and has begun, in my opinion, to really like research and understand and make those attempts to understand more. And I feel like I was so black and white growing up with her that I didn't like afford her that space to actually educate herself. And I like imposed that assumption on her that she should have educated herself.
Yeah, and it's really hard to like have those conversations, especially with family, and just kind of like open yourself to that kind of realization that, you don't share the same values necessarily. But I think, within that, there's so much possibility for changing people's minds because who is going to get through to your mom better than you?
Yeah. And like my mom grew up very much in the Catholic Church. Like no wonder she hasn't heard these opinions, whereas she brought me up not in that context. And she brought me up teaching me like words like gay are in like insults and things like that. So like she gave me that space. So I feel like I owe it to her too now to like give her that space, I guess, too.
What do you think about this topic of conversation?
Well, I think coming out as trans is most probably one of the hardest things that a person can do, especially in today's society. I have a lot of admiration for trans people who do come out. I'm learning so much. I'm opening up my eyes. I mean, it was 2001 before I met a trans person. That's like, I was in my 40s.
I don't know. I feel like I look around at my parents' generation and my parents' friends, and I'm like, they're all straight. They wouldn't understand me. And like, it's a reason they're all straight. They're not actually all straight,
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like my grandma's got like, I don't believe ever had like a queer friend, but like she has, I'm sure. Like, you know, it's easy to think that they don't exist just because people aren't out. So,
your question originally was, what's working and not working, right? I can't remember the question. And we've wonderfully deviated a little bit from that, but it feels important to talk about the fact that there's no question that older members of our communities, seniors, aging members, are at huge risk in terms of the strong possibility that we'll end up in nursing homes or seniors' residences where there's been some great training here in Montreal and certainly in Toronto, anti-discrimination training, but really it's a drop in the bucket. It's barely begun. And that is what has triggered this housing project that I'm part of, because there is a very strong possibility, were I to go into I'm of Ukrainian background, so were I to choose to go to the Ukrainian villa, which is in close to me, it would be very questionable as to how safe and comfortable I would be there. And very likely, I would have to go fully back into the closet. I wouldn't, because I haven't come this far to do that. But who knows in terms of where I am at the time that might be necessary, because one can't always fight. But this is a huge concern in our world.
Yeah, I have a question about that housing project. Is it, I don't know, I guess it just strikes me as such a like great idea for like younger queer people to be taking care of older queer people. Is that part of it at all?
No, it's what it would be is it would be part of a project that included 3 other women's groups. But it would be a housing project, a residence for, I believe, 22 units where members of the aging lesbian community could live. So there isn't that component at all. Certainly, we have there is a strong vision of that bridging of gaps between seniors and younger people, because the 2 other groups, one is a single mother's housing project group, and the other is a housing for women who are marginalized or at risk in some kind of way. So we will be wonderfully surrounded by lots of young people, but we'll see how that plays out. We can't predict, but
can't wait to live there.
Yeah, I think it would be very, very beneficial for younger like people to be around like older members of the community. It's something I realized a few months ago, personally, because I was studying oral history at York University in Toronto, and we had to do this oral history project, and I chose to do it on 2 main figures of Franco-Ontarian and LGBTQ activism, like back in the 70s and the 80s. And it was such a learning process for me to talk to these people, like do very long interviews with them. And I discovered many, many things. And it was also very emotional when they talked to me about, for instance, the HIV crisis and, very difficult memories. And I felt also like very, touched and like close to them. And I think it would be something like with a wider educational purpose. It would be amazing to bring together like younger people and older people.
Well, I think the concept is fabulous. So we've just received confirmation of funding, actually. So
it's exciting.
We can celebrate.
We have some cards on the table. We're going to dip into them, go back to some other questions, dip into them, that type of thing. But if we want to ask a card question to them, it's up to you. Feel free to choose one as you would like.
Is your life what you expected it to be at this moment?
Well, if I went back 26 years, absolutely not. Far, 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 far from it. But it's in a place that I can't imagine not being. It's wonderful to be where I am.
Can I ask, did you, reflecting now, did you ever deep down know in your heart that you would admit this to someone someday, that you were a lesbian? Or were you truly convinced yourself fully?
You mean before coming out?
Yeah.
No, it was so suppressed. There were those around me who knew before I did. It was deeply suppressed.
Danny, how about you? Is your life what you would have expected at this moment?
I think that our history is how we made it to today, and that our history is important. So I am where I'm supposed to be, is I guess what I can say to that. Because I think all of the experiences, whether good or bad, make me the person that I am today.
Should I have a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
What was one of your reasons for wanting and or needing to live as a person who is out? What do you think of the words want versus need to be out?
Well, mine was a need, actually. Leading up to coming out, I felt quite ill, actually, and which is quite uncharacteristic of me. But I just kept getting all these flus, these viruses, and it was clearly kind of part of the coming out was working, a physicality thing that was happening. And as soon as I told the first person that I was coming out, everything went away.
Mm.
Wow.
So it was a need. It was it was it was so suppressed, and that built up to the point where, okay, first of all, it was the physical symptoms, and then it was the dream.
My experience was kind of the opposite. At first, I thought that I needed to do it. I felt forced because it's something that everyone should do, or that I should do it because otherwise it's gonna be weird, and at some point I'm gonna get a boyfriend and I'm gonna bring this person home and they wouldn't know, and so during many years I thought it was a necessity, and so this is so because it was a necessity, I didn't want to do it, so I didn't do it during many years, and I tried. I was okay, I'm gonna do it tomorrow, and I didn't do it. It was it doesn't come from the earth. And then something, changed in my life, something happened. And through a series of events, I eventually realized that I needed to want to do it.
I
And
love that.
yeah. And so then something happened and I wanted to do it, and it was it was way easier. And then I felt relieved. But it's a lot to take into consideration before doing it. Yeah.
The coming out process is specific to each individual, and you do it on your own time. I was forced out to my parents. My first boyfriend, I think it lasted 3 or 4 months. Anyways, he broke off with me, and I cried literally for 3 days. It didn't stop, non-stop crying. And my mother couldn't understand. I was still at home at the time. And my mother couldn't understand what I was doing. So she rifled through my dresser drawers and found the love letter that I had written to him that I never sent to him, asking him to take me back. And so I was forced. But I've always needed to be myself, because when I was a young adolescent, I would see, boyfriend and girlfriend together, and I'm going, that doesn't feel right for me. So it was more of a need, but yeah, coming out is certainly, nobody should force you out. You have to take your time and find the right time for yourself.
Yeah, for me, like, I don't know, I say the cat was out of the bag, but like, I don't know, it's complicated because I was a really like femme kid. Like I would like make my cousin like do makeovers on me and put on my makeup and, you know, playing with dolls and all of that. But at the same time was, you know, having masculinity forced on me. Like my only siblings are 2 older brothers, and it was just a very masculine household. And I kind of got lost in the shuffle. And like, I don't know, I think as like in school, I got bullied for it a lot too. But none of that really ever, like I still thought like, I'm just different, like I'm straight, like, you know, it hadn't really, crystallized. And then I remember it was like the day that America legalized gay marriage. I came out actually on Twitter, and I remember like doing that and then being like, oh shit, I have to go home and tell my family before they hear it from someone else. And I sat my family down and told them, and like my dad was so shocked, which is hilarious because it's like, how could you not know? And my mom was also quite surprised, but later told everyone like, oh, I always knew. But yeah, I think that like having that experience, especially when it's something that like you're really afraid of doing, and like being met with acceptance is like, you know, one of the most important things that a queer person can experience.
Do you have any advice for youth? So 2 things. If you want to respond to anything that was shared. And also, just so we make sure that we have it in here, do you have any advice that you would like to share?
Just my advice is to be yourselves. Be fully yourselves.
Love yourself. Sometimes it's hard to understand that function, that you have to love yourself. You are who you are, whether it's nature or nurture. You know, all of those parts make up who you are. And as you grow up, you're going to have influences, but you're also going to have the nature part, which is what you were meant to be. And I just say, love yourself and be good to yourself. And if you are struggling, find somebody, find a person that you can reach out to. Because I reached out to a priest. I told him that I thought I was gay, and he just made a joke out of it. So make sure you find somebody that you think you can trust and talk to. Because I think talking is very important. It's how we all make ourselves known and makes ourselves feel better.
And I'll just add on to that I too reached out at this time that was very turbulent in my life to a woman who was a member of the church, a lesbian, an out lesbian, and I knew the family, I knew her partner. She's Kathleen Wynne, who used to be the Premier of Ontario, actually. And they were the one example that I had of a family unit where the women had left relationships, husband, or Kathleen had, not Jane, her partner. Kathleen had left, separated from her husband to be with Jane, where the family unit stayed strong. And that was a huge piece that was helpful for me because I risked my family unit. Well, it could have been destroyed. Thankfully, it didn't. In fact, it's so big now, my blended family, that I can hardly keep track of it. But I too reached out. In fact, after this graphic dream, the first person I reached out to was Kathleen. I sent her an email asking if we could have coffee. We met that same day.
Wow.
Can I ask you, like, how did you navigate, like, telling everyone in your family? Because, like, obviously, like, this doesn't erase the part of your life that you had before you realized you were a lesbian. Like, how do you preserve the person that you were during those years too?
That's a long story. I just did my best, and I was really challenged by one of my oldest friends in terms of how I approached that, which didn't make it any easier. But I basically followed my heart, and yes, it wasn't easy initially. It took a while for the waters to settle, that's for sure. But my former husband and I were both on the same page in terms of keeping our family unit strong. And that's all it took.
We have 5 more minutes for this conversation. So I would like to go around the table and see if anybody has anything else to add. If you had any advice for younger folks who are listening in on this, do you have anything to share? And if you have any parting words?
I guess in terms of like advice for young queer kids, like I would just say that, you know, like you deserve to be loved exactly as you are, and you deserve to feel joy. And that no matter, you know, the myriad ways that this world might reject you, like there are people out there who will love you exactly as you are and will make you feel, like it was all worthwhile. And and I know that to be true. And that I feel like is a promise that I can make. And I guess, you know, in terms of closing words, I just want to thank you both so much, and like all of you, for making this happen. There are things that I heard here that I will definitely, you know, carry with me forever. And and thank you for all the work you've done for, you know, queer and trans communities. Just generally, because it's very palpable that you've made the world a better place.
Just because someone knew that you were gay before you did doesn't mean that they made you gay or that they like decided that you were queer. Because I feel like from talking to so many people like now about like when did you realize you were gay, so many people have a really common experience of like being bullied for being gay when they're very young. And like that, like I heard the word dyke before I heard the word lesbian when I was like 5. And like I don't know how those people knew I was gay. And I feel like that was something I held on to for a really long time, was like, I only think I'm gay now because like that formed in my brain. But like, no, like being gay is extremely common and like is not as much of a small community as I feel like you're made to think when you're in straight spaces, especially in school.
I think I have an advice to give. Mm-hmm. It's an advice I would give to like younger people, but also to the younger me. I realized I was gay like I was young, and it really destroyed my dream at the time. And my dream was very naive, but it was just to have a wife, have kids, have my own house, have pets, and have a happy life with like a happy, stable life. And then when I realized, who I am, I was totally destroyed for like weeks and months and perhaps even years, because I was like, what am I gonna do with my life? Yeah. Can I have like, will I have kids or not? And then, with time, I just realized that it's not gonna define what I'm gonna do in life. Like I can choose what I want to. And I think it would be important for young people to understand that they should not see their sexual orientation as a limitation, but as another way to achieve their dreams, I think.
Do you have any parting words?
I guess the biggest thing is come out when it's right for you. But I think that for the community as a whole, the action of coming out and sharing who you are with people around you. For example, you said you don't think your grandmother ever knew a queer person. But everybody does. Yeah. Your grandmother went to hairdressers. So most probably one of those people were gay. So the issue is you need to come out in order to safeguard our community. It's a way of showing people who are less educated, maybe ignorant of the facts, that we're just people too. Come out when you want to, come out when you need to, but come out at some point.
Well, I'd like to start by saying that for me, this has been incredibly rich and beautiful. And I would wish for all my older lesbian friends that they would be so lucky to have young people in their lives like you. And I end with a hope that we can more and more move to a place of allyship. So even when there are differences, even when we don't agree ideologically or emotionally on things, that we can ally with those who aren't as privileged as many of us are, and who can use our support. To me, allyship is an aspect of being part of the queer community that has utmost importance.
So I want to thank you, everyone, for being here. That's our time for now. And I want to thank everybody who's watching. And a word of advice that I might add to younger folks is that if you are listening to this and you don't feel safe enough to come out, I love you a lot. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you again.